Hey guys, and welcome to Mixed Review. And if you've clicked on this video, you know we're going to be talking about Fear's mixes today. So I spoke with Fear in the week, and of course, he said he will try and be in the show. So if he is here, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us in chat. Otherwise, he'll definitely catch the replay. But for everybody joining us here in chat, thank you so much for the ongoing support and hanging out with us. But I'll pretty much kick off the show with Lightning Bug. Okay, so Lightning Bug is a recipe that was created in 2016. So I'm always down for like a candy, a jelly candy specifically. So, you know, this one was looking like something I would want to mix up, you know. So Fear talks about this being similar to Redneck Juice Company Lightning Bug. So this is obviously a remix of that profile, or that I don't know if that juice is still available. But the recipe itself is 3% jelly candy, 4% LA lemonade, 0.5% Inuera shisha vanilla, 0.25 cap super sweet, 1% cap vanilla custard, right? So how the flavors are used. So yeah, cap jelly candy is used as a gummy base. He used a little bit high over here at 3%, but it really holds nicely in the mix. LA lemonade. Fear calls this a crappy country town powdered lemonade mix, but then goes on to say that it's one of his go-to lemon flavors because it just plays really well, and especially like a mix like this. Then Inuera shisha vanilla. He says this vanilla is just beautifully balanced, or excuse me, this vanilla is beautifully balanced in the recipe. It adds to the lemon profile. So yeah, that's just some of my notes. It's not overpowering whatsoever. And then he banged in some Van Custard V1, I believe, just to thicken up everything and give nice mouthfeel. So yeah, I think if you had to look at this recipe in 2016, there's some really cool little things that you could learn from this. He definitely, I mean, if he mixed this up, I think the original recipe had Swedish fish in it, and he changed it up with cap jelly candy. So I think this is a reworked version, but you know, still there's the cap vanilla custard used in here to add mouthfeel. Really a good idea. I'm gonna play around with that in some of my jelly candies as well to see how it works. But very nice balance between the lemonade and shisha vanilla. It gives the vanilla a nice round dimension. So this took me back right to my youth, and you know, this is what this mix is about. As it's one of those mixes that just takes you back. You know, I don't know if you guys can remember, but like when I was young and I would go into a boring pharmacy, there wasn't a whole aisle on your way out with just candies everywhere like it is today. There was zero candy in a pharmacy. There was no candy there. Then in front, you might have had like 2 glass jars with these like grandma candies in it. You know what I mean? These sort of like jelly candies with this white powder outside, and it wasn't powdered sugar on the outside. It was just like white powder, right? The candy itself wasn't sweet as well. It was just slightly sweet. The version over here that he talks about, that he's reminded of, is not a version of this jelly candy that I tasted, but I can just imagine that this was available at the time. So yeah, this took me right back to my youth. It definitely hits the profile bang on. Like I said, it's amazing considering this is a 2016 mix. If you want to take a trip down memory lane, go check this out. So there's nothing I can really fault in this recipe. I tried it in a 22 millimeter ATI, also varying temperatures, and it holds up quite nicely. So if you're looking for something like that, you know, vanilla lemon jelly candy. Go and try this out. So tip off my banger on this. I can't fault this. This is good.
I also did lightning bug, and I should have stopped you halfway through your notes because I felt you were saying exactly what I was making my notes on. This really reminds me, as you said, it takes me back. It reminds me of specifically pharmacy. So I don't know if you grew up in a small farm town place like I did, but I thought it was only us people in small little plaasdorpies. We also had at the pharmacy, there was no sweets or sweet aisles throughout the pharmacy. There was a few jars at the till, and it was always tuisnywerheid candies, homemade candies by normally labeled by Tannie Tali's flipping this or Oma Leni's fudge. It was always some grandma or some aunt branded sweets, but it was always homemade. Now this reminded me also exactly to the T of the yellow one. They had a yellow one and they had a pink one, I think. Sometimes it was sold as Turkish Delight, but I mean, it's not Turkish Delight. It was just homemade soft candy. I would almost not call it jelly candy, just soft candy, but in any case, it is that. What really surprised me about this, I'm just going to jump through the concentrates again on this one. The 3% cap jelly candy, 4% LA lemonade, 0.5 shisha vanilla, 0.25 super sweet, and 1% cap vanilla custard. Now, everything that Theo said as well, I mean, this is spot on to the profile. I would only imagine the original would. This is exactly what it tastes like. I mean, it matches 100% the profile of the candy that I know from our pharmacies back in the day. This was the homemade candies you got in the pharmacy. What really surprises me here is, and this was something I thought I would be the only one noting. There was always a coating around these sweets, but not sugar. It's a powder. It's like a powder. So it might be icing sugar, but I mean, that's the consistency of the powder. It's a fine powder that's sprinkled around it. Now, to me, when I read the ingredients and I made the recipe, I didn't expect that sugar coating in that way. But that was what I was imagining when I took a sniff of it. That vanilla in the yellow candy takes it away from a jelly for me and makes it a soft, old school, soft type of candy, like the old school homemade candies that you got back then. So the interesting part for me was really just that sugar coating. I mean, on every puff, you totally get it. You get the inhale, you get the flavor, the vanilla in there with the lemon profile. Then on the exhale, you get that full sugar coating on the outside of the jelly. I mean, the jelly's consistency is even there. It's a soft candy, which I would assume is coming from the vanilla custard. But that sugar coating is just so strange. I mean, with no sugar added or powder sugar profile in the mix, it just smashes that profile of that sugar coating around a very soft candy. And then again, back to the flavor profile, the way the lemon and that vanilla mixes in gives you that authentic, old school homemade candies. So for me also, it is a good recipe. And considering this was a 2016 recipe, it was really good. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the fact that it could take me back in the instant of a puff. It's very interesting when you find a juice that gives you that nostalgic feel on the first puff, you know. So for me also, I would take out the tip of my banger for this one. It's a good recipe. I enjoyed it. Very authentic on that sugar profile, and to me, it's always magical when you get something from a profile, but you would never have imagined it from looking at the concentrates. Because, I mean, I read the description of what the mixes say, but what people say in a mix and what you get sometimes is very different due to the fact that your taste is very subjective. But with this, it's very interesting to see the magic of the sugar coating. It impresses me the most when you get something that wasn't even in there. So I enjoyed this one. Very, very well done. Thank you.
All right, so I mixed up butterscotch, aka burley scotch V2. I don't think you could talk about fear without talking about tobaccos, because he is majority tobaccos. That's 90% of the recipes are tobacco. I'd say 90% loosely. It might be 80%. No one hold me to that. So I'll go over the flavors quickly. So Flavor West Butter Scotch at 6%, Flavora Cured Tobacco at 1%, Cap French Vanilla at 1.3%, TFA Marshmallow at 1%, and Flavora Red Burley at 1.75%. So what it is, and he doesn't allude to it so much, but what a RY4 is basically vanilla, caramel, and tobacco. And what Fear has done is made his own RY4 with a lot more tobacco forward. So what he's used was the tobaccos Red Burley and Pure Tobacco are one of the best tobaccos on the market. Flavora is known for doing really good tobaccos, and these are the best artificial ones. So he does say that he originally started with NETs, where he tried to create a tobacco, but then it's not as accessible. So playing around with this, he managed to create the same recipe with, or close to the same recipe with artificial flavors. And then he uses French vanilla and marshmallow to kind of boost the vanilla notes of it and the creaminess for an RY4, and butterscotch at 6%, which is quite high for a butterscotch, but I think butterscotch sits better than a caramel. It's got a bit extra to it. It's a bit darker. It sits with the tobacco much better than a regular caramel for me. Like the thing with RY4 is it gets very light on the caramel, and it's not a caramel flavoring that I'm familiar with. In terms of it feels lighter when it's normally a normal RY4, where this butterscotch feels thicker, and it really adds to the rest of the tobaccos. For me, he does say a 12-day steep on it, but shake and vape. But I usually do it at about the 5-day mark, which is good for me. And I've vaped this one quite a few times over the years because it's one of his best works. So for me, it's a fist bump and a tip of the banger. There we go.
All right, I don't do tobaccos at all, which is a bit of a limiting factor when one is reviewing Fear. It kind of cuts one's choice down quite a lot. But I retired to the non-manly, non-tobacco corner and looked through, and I decided firstly on ONA, which is his Opinions and Assholes recipe. So-called, I presume, because everybody has one, and this is a strawberry milk / cream, and everybody has one of those as well. So this is Fear's version. It's firstly 2.25% 1-on-1 cream milky undertone, 1% TFA dragon fruit, 0.5% of FA marshmallow. His strawberry combo is 2.5% Inawera shisha as the primary strawberry, complemented with 3.5% of FA red touch. He adds a little bit more creaminess with 1.5% Inawera shisha vanilla and 1.2% FA Vienna cream. Now, I was initially a little, not alarmed, but intrigued by this, because strawberry milks usually have somewhere, sort of 5 to 8% total strawberry flavor, and then we think of God milk with 4% each of strawberry and ripe. This one has 6%, but it's Inawera and FA strawberries. So, those are two fairly potent strawberries. The FA isn't that potent, but the Inawera certainly is. So I was expecting a fairly strawberry prominent mix. He says that this mix can be shake and baked. I tried that, and I wouldn't recommend it. Any mix with FA Vienna is going to have off notes for at least the first couple of days. And also, particularly at higher wattages, I found that shisha strawberry and red touch strawberry mix to be a little bit pungent and potent and overpowering the cream a bit. But that's fine. I mean, I hardly do shake and vapes on any juice that I do. So I just did it for science, but it's not how I would vape it. Now, after about a week, those strawberries have tamed. They've receded back into the cream base. The balance is really good. It's lost that sort of pungency. I also turned the wattage down a little bit. Those acetone notes have gone from the FA Vienna. Those have steeped out. And now this is really coming together very, very nicely. as with all strawberry creams, it's going to depend a lot on your palate and how you like the balance. Some people like a prominent strawberry with just a hint of cream. Some people like a very thick, rich cream with just a blush of strawberry. I tend more towards the latter. I like to be tasting the cream with the strawberry, just not an accent, but just an underplayed strawberry top note. And this is now getting into that zone. The strawberry still is a little bit more prominent, but certainly very nicely balanced. Overall, it's a lighter texture. I think that's thanks to the cream milky undertone. It's a little bit more milk than really thick cream. I don't find it to be very sweet at all. And Fia again says sweetening is up to you. He would use, he likes it both with sweetener and without, but if he was going to use sweetener, he'd use Cap Super Sweet. I mixed it initially without sweetener at all because that's my default. I think when I mix this again, I will probably put in a drop with 30 mils of Super Sweet, just enough to just rack it up a notch on the sweetness. Compared to other strawberry milk, strawberry creams, is this among my favorites? I'll give this a qualified yes on the basis that it's only a week in. I don't know what it is with strawberry creams, but they are supposedly ready quite quickly. I've never found one that is. I was in that faction of God Milk mixers who thought it was pretty mediocre for the first 8 weeks, and then suddenly in week 9 some magical transition occurs. It becomes more velvety, more sumptuous. The strawberries blend better, they pop better. Just the whole thing hangs together and it suddenly moves into the next level. I had the same thing with Chibas Tiba's sweet strawberry cream, and the same thing with Daniel's the juice. The longer I leave the strawberry cream, the better and better and better it gets. And I suspect this will be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably finish this batch that I've got. I'm already about a third of the way through, and I only started, vaping it properly and continually yesterday. But what I'll do is I'll make another batch of this and just put it away for 2 months. And I will make a very bold prediction that it's going to be an absolutely banging strawberry and cream at that time. So I can't say for sure. I'm only a week in, but my sense, based on comparing this to other strawberry creams after a week, is that this is going to be one of my favorite ones. So really solid mix, Fia, and thank you for that.
So I decided to man up and mix up some tobacco. This is a recent thing for me, so my information on this is light. I don't have months and months worth of tobacco experience from a vaping perspective, but I've definitely mixed up a couple now, especially with the Flavora tobaccos that I've gotten in. I've got my own tobacco recipe out as well. Just the first one that I played around with some cured tobacco because, of course, that's a shake and vape or more shake and vape. So you can play around with it and you can get something together pretty quickly. So I know a lot of us are going to talk about Cardinal tonight, and I'll kick off. But what's really interesting about Cardinal for me is everybody started talking about it this year. Well, in the circles that I move in, right? Everybody started talking about it in this year. But this recipe was created in 2017. And actually, in the beginning of 2017, which is so bizarre. So it took this recipe pretty much almost 2 years, to really, on our side here in South Africa, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it now. I'm seeing a lot of people vaping it now. The word is really spreading on this side. Might be very different, in other parts of the world, but definitely over here, there's been an awakening of Cardinal, as you may. But a little bit about Cardinal. So it is 8% DFS Holy Grail RY4, 0.25 Kentucky Blend Flavora, and 0.75 Red Burley Flavora. Okay. He says here he has 3 favorite RY4s. The original Hang Seng holds a special place in his heart. So I'm going to go and check out that one as well. RY4 double TFA does well, but he says it gets a little bit harsh. And then Holy Grail RY4 from DIYFS is near perfect for him. But he says it suffers from the same thing all RY4s do, and that's just not enough tobacco. That's why he combats that in this recipe by adding Kentucky Blend and Red Burley. Okay, so the total recipe percentage is sitting at 9% as a total. Fia talks about Red Burley. He says that this one fades a little bit, but in this mix, he says after about a week, the Red Burley drops out and then magically appears, in week 4 again. So kind of like week 3 is like week 2 and week 3, it might disappear. And then, week 4, it's back again. But then when it bounces back as a nice nuance, and it's very present still then at that point. Then the reason why he added Kentucky Blend is because that's the smoky ashiness, give it that tobacco authenticity, right? I think he blended these two beautifully. What I'm getting, and I'm going to leave it for everybody else to give their opinions. I'm vaping this in mouth to lung on my Berserker at 8%. Not 8%, 8 milligram. So I didn't vape this in RDA. It weirds me out how you can direct lung a tobacco vape. I don't know if that's a thing. Is it a thing? Are people direct lunging tobacco vapes? Anyway, so that's how I've been testing it as well. What I'm getting is a beautifully balanced tobacco, slightly ashy and smoky. So a lovely semi-dark vanilla caramel with almost round creamy finish. That would be my best description of it, right? By far, this is the best tobacco that I've ever had in my entire life. I don't even think this is the gateway into tobaccos. I think this is just solid tobacco. You know what I mean? For me, this is just a solid tobacco recipe, and that's what it is. Dietz? You also have this one, right?
Yes. I've actually been mixing up Cardinal for, I think, this full year so far. I might have mixed it the first time somewhere late last year, but I've been mixing it constantly for this year so far. I mean, it's been in every one of my mixes, so I always make sure I have at least 100 ml of it around. This is a very, very, very awesome tobacco, in my opinion. This was also the first tobacco that I mixed by someone else that I ended up mixing over and over again. This took everything about RY4 that I did not like and added everything that I didn't like about RY4. To me, RY4 was always too much caramel and too little tobacco, as he says, as all RY4 suffer from, and that is definitely the case. It's a lot more on the desserty, caramelly side than on the tobacco. So when someone tells me RY4 is a caramel tobacco, I expect the tobacco. But more often than not, there's really not much tobacco going on. I mean, you might get a little bit of a whiff of tobacco on the exhale or something, or a little bit, but it's not tobacco forward. And in my opinion, you can't call it a tobacco concentrate then. But in this case, the way the recipe's been composed, or the ingredients that he used, definitely improves with that little bit of addition of the Kentucky Blend and the Red Burley. It just kicks it up a few notches on the tobacco. And after a good steep, I mean, as you mentioned, the Red Burley disappears and then pops up again later. But when it pops up again, that blend of the Kentucky and the Red Burley together gives you a very, very, very solid and rich tobacco without being overpowering, dry, or harsh, which I get a lot with tobaccos. If you push up the percentage to where the tobacco is what a lot of people, if you are like me and you want to taste the tobacco, if you get it to the percentage where it's acceptable on the flavor side, then you're dealing with a lot of other aspects like harshness or dryness, or it's too smoky or stuff like that. This is just really, to me, I would put it in my top tobacco recipes of this year. Actually, of all my tobaccos, it's definitely, I would say, and it would stay in my top 3 tobaccos forever. I'm sure it will. This also inspired me to mix up a lot of my own tobaccos, and I only really started playing with tobacco after I vaped this over and over and over. I never get tired of it. I've always got it in one of my MTL tanks, and also at 8 milligram. I found that just works very, very well for the profile. So all in all, for me, it's really just a beautiful tobacco with a creamy caramel, the RY4 going on, but really improved. The combination of the Holy Grail with the pairing of the two other tobaccos just gives you what in my opinion, what RY4 should have been or should be. So this is to me just the perfect caramel tobacco or RY4 tobacco, if that's what you're going for. It's for everyone also. I wouldn't say it's only for the hardcore tobacco fans, because it is definitely tobacco, and it satisfies the tobacco lover on what they need from a tobacco. But at the same time, it's not so much tobacco that any other person who would like to try tobacco would be scared away immediately, because you do get these super tobaccos, very, very close to what any teas are. And a lot of the time, if people aren't tobacco fans, then that would normally be the first and last tobacco vape they vape, because it's too harsh, it's too tobacco-y, a lot of people get a lot of perfumey notes, like men's cologne type of notes from a tobacco. And if you are not into tobaccos or you haven't experimented with tobaccos, then something like that will definitely scare you away from mixing any other tobaccos. I mean, I found the same with when I mixed up a Beulah the first time. A Beulah is also one of Few's recipes, and I wasn't planning on talking about it because I don't actually have it mixed up now, but I have mixed it in the past. And that just has a little bit more advanced things in it that I wouldn't say is necessarily for the first time tobacco vapor. So as a tobacco and as a RY4, it works beautifully for a beginner tobacco, people who wants to get into tobacco or try and experiment with tobacco. It's really creamy, a full profile. It's not too much of either the caramel, the creamy side, or the tobacco side. It just blends beautifully, and I keep coming back to this thing. It is just a really delicious tobacco recipe. And I mean, it's inspired me to do my own tobacco recipes also. I mean, I think this inspired, actually this improved. I had an issue with one of my own tobaccos, and I've been experimenting with tobaccos also for about a year and a half. I would say more seriously experimenting with tobaccos for about a year now, and I've always had a problem of harshness on one of my vanilla tobaccos. I think it's called Vanilla Leaves on ATF. That has always been too harsh. And then when I found Cardinal, I was introduced to Holy Grail, and that addition to my vanilla leaves just made the world's difference. So, I mean, epic recipe that learned me a lot, also helped me improve some of my own recipes, and just all in all, permanent rotation juice. For me, this would be a fist pump, 2 fist pumps, and a full banger. Just hands down the best tobacco for the year. If I had to choose one, it would be this one. So, epic recipe, and well done, and thanks, Thea.
Yeah, did I say banger?
No, you didn't.
I'm just saying, well, I'm just letting you know that's what I'm saying, right? It's a banger from my side as well.
It is definitely, I agree. Yeah. So I also mixed up Cardinal. I know all 3 went there. But so to me, Cardinal it's not just a banger, it's a lifetime achievement award. It's the tobacco that's going to still be there 20 years from now, and I'll still go back to it. What I also get, and I see a couple of people saying as well, is there's a bit of like a coffee to it, almost like an accent of coffee beans that I get from it. And I know, so when I first mixed it up, we didn't have DIYFS flavors in South Africa, and I wasn't going to order in from the States because it gets pretty pricey then. So I spoke to Fear about like possible subs, and he was quite open to talking about what could possibly be subbed for Holy Grail. And he said RY4 double at 4%, TFA caramel cappuccino at 2%, and creme fraiche at 1%, and then we had FA caramel at 1%. So we used those flavors to basically rebuild the profile. And then when we did get DIYFS year, it's close. Like what he helped with the sub. So it just shows you like how well he knows his flavors, that he can actually rebuild it, because what Holy Grail is a one shot, right? It's already crafted from a bunch of different flavors, and he was able to pick up those flavors from there and give me a pretty solid sub in terms of getting close to Cardinal. And when I did mix up Cardinal, though, it was 10 times better than what I had started with. And that's when we finally had the flavors to mix it. And it's honestly one of the best tobaccos out there. And it reminds me a lot of, so when I first started vaping, I got Twist Tobacco 1, which is one of the best tobaccos I've ever tasted. And when I got, so I started with mouth to lung, and then I stopped vaping for a while and started smoking. And when I got back to vaping in 2015, when I got back to vaping, and then I was doing direct lung, in 2015 I started again. I was looking for that tobacco, but I was not going to buy something because at that time Twist was still only 18 milligrams, and I wasn't going to do 18 milligrams direct lung. So I was always seeking a tobacco that would remind me of that tobacco or be better than that tobacco. And I held everything up to that pedestal, where I now hold everything up to Cardinal pedestal, because Cardinal's better, but it has similarities to this Twist Tobacco 1, the first commercial juice that I actually bought. And to me, it's one of the greatest tobaccos of all time. I'm not joking. I think if somebody this is gonna be in the history books. Like if we have a vaping history book, someone's gonna open up and there's gonna be Cardinal from Fear in it. So for me, it's just a 2 fist bumps, a banger, like 100%. It's really good.
Right, for my second one, I mixed up Cardinal. Just kidding. You know me, I'm not going to do tobacco.
Well done.
No Cardinal to me. But it is historical, so there's that. Now, I mixed up instead peppermintington cookies. You know me, I like my fat kid food. And Liquid Barn White Chocolate Peppermint is one of the premier concentrates for that. Fear mixed this up fairly quickly after the concentrate became available. So it was one of the first and one of the most promising looking recipes for it. Of course, I had to give it a go. Now let's just go through the recipe. 0.5% Jungle Flavors biscuit and 3.5% capped sugar cookie is the cookie base, along with 0.3% of TFA butter. He adds in 1% Inawera shisha vanilla, just to add some vanilla and also just a bit of sort of creaminess and thickening into that cookie base. Just a dab of Cap Super Sweet to sweeten it all up. And then the star of the show being 7% Liquid Barn White Chocolate Peppermint. Now, I was quite surprised at this. I mean, I know it's Liquid Barn, so 7% isn't excessive, but I was quite surprised on tasting it, just how subtly layered in that chocolate peppermint flavor is into the cookie base. It achieves a really lovely balance for me between the cookie base and the peppermint top note. It's a good blonde cookie. He added the JF biscuit just to add a bit of crunch, which is fair enough, but it doesn't go into that darker territory of FA cookie. This is very much a blonde cookie. What I found as well is that the chocolate note in the white chocolate peppermint tends to blend into the the cookie base and the shisha vanilla more than it tends to cling to the peppermint. So what it tastes like is almost, I would just call it a peppermint cookie, because that chocolate now becomes part of the cookie base rather than the companion to the peppermint. So it registers pretty well as a peppermint cookie. And it's a cookie with little bits of peppermint in it. It's not a millimeter of cookie base with an inch of peppermint on top of it, which is maybe what some people would like, but it's not my palate. This is nicely blended. I don't want to get brain freeze from mint vapes. I just want that subtle accent that just cools it a little bit and gives that lovely peppermint flavor. And this achieves that absolutely 100%. But the crux of the mix for me, and this was really interesting because Fia says in his notes, he says it's pretty self-explanatory what he's done here, and it is. But the one addition to the recipe that he doesn't talk about in the notes, and which becomes key for me, is the 0.3% TFA butter. I didn't even think of it when I was mixing it up. I mean, butter in bakeries just becomes, it's almost like a knee-jerk default template. You add a little bit of butter to your bakery and it becomes better. So 0.3% TFA butter, I glossed over that. I thought, great, that fits in with the theory. That's going to work fine. When I came to testing the juice for the first time, it was actually a bit of an eye-opening moment, because what I now had, both from the JF biscuit and from the TFA butter, because JF biscuit does have quite a butter note in it, and then the TFA on top of that, is I had peppermint dipped in melted butter. And my first thing was, is this really working for me? And at first I thought, yeah, it's different. It's interesting. It's working for me. Then I went through about a day where I thought, no, this just doesn't work. These two flavors don't work together. Butter and mint is not doing it for me. Now I've come to a sort of compromise position where I can live with it, but it's not what I would do with it going forward. Now, obviously, this isn't a criticism of the recipe. It's palate specific. Some people are going to love the butter. Some people won't care for it. I'm more in the latter group. So when I make this again, and I will make it again, so that's a recommendation right there, I would probably leave the TFA butter out. I realize it's going to do things to the cookie, but I would rather not have such a prominent butter note with that mint. If it's a slightly drier cookie, I think that's going to fit with that mint profile to me. So I would probably leave the recipe as is, just leave out the TFA butter, and I'm sure that's going to be a banging mint cookie. It's a difficult flavor to work with, that white chocolate peppermint, because it does so much on its own that there's really not an awful lot that you can do to move it away from that white chocolate peppermint profile. It's almost a one shot on its own. So it really is going to be stuff like just putting it with an ice cream, or putting it with a cookie, or something that just adds a little bit of texture and just gives it a base to work off of. And this is as good as anything I've seen. So that's a recommendation in the first pump there. But just as I say, I'll probably leave out the butter, and then I'll be happy vaping this as part of my rotation. So thanks a lot for that, Fia.
Guys, we're pretty much coming to the end of our show. So, guys, do you want to add anything else on your side?
I actually want to ask guys a question on Cardinal. So I read his notes where he says that he doubles his tobacco percentages if it's for a long steep. So if he's going to steep it for like a 2 month or a month, he doubles it. But have you found that if you're doing mouth to lung, so I actually should have mentioned, but I did everything direct lung, including Cardinal. I only got into the mouth to lung bandwagon recently. I had a couple of pod devices, but I wasn't really messing around with them or putting flavors. But do you double your tobacco percentages for a mouth to lung as well, or do you just keep it the same?
I do. I make it double, but not specifically for mouth to lung, just because I really like a very intense tobacco. I mean, as you mentioned, Twist tobacco number 1 Now, when I said I've got 3 top tobaccos of all time, not just the year, it would be Cardinal, it would be My Vanilla Leaves, and then, or actually it would be Twist Q #1, tobacco #1 first, and then My Vanilla Leaves. Those are my 3 top tobaccos. Now, what I love about the Twist Q's tobacco #1 is it's, to me, the most authentic tobacco that I've tasted in any purchased tobacco. It's so authentic. I mean, I've played around, and I am currently playing around with a few NETs as well. And this, to me, is as close to any NET I've ever had. So, okay, I'm getting off the point, but I do increase my Cardinal because I love my tobacco, and I love a very strong tobacco forward. So for my wife, I generally we mix 2 batches. We mix the normal Cardinal, which is my wife's preferred, and then I mix another Cardinal with the tobaccos increased or doubled. It just works better for me in my mouth to lung, and it gives me a little bit more tobacco. Not that the original is anything less. It's just for my own personal taste, I like it more tobacco forward. So I also increase it. I've never direct to lung, or I might have tested it on direct lung, but I've never vaped it straight for direct to lung for any purpose. So that would be weird for me, because to me tobacco is just that. That's what I loved about the Twist Q with these pod devices. It's mouth to lung, which is, to me, simulating a cigarette, or what I liked about a cigarette. So it would be difficult to imagine myself direct to lunging a cigarette. So for the same reason, it feels unnatural to direct to lung a tobacco for me. It just doesn't work that well.
But it happens though, right? People direct
It
lung
does.
cigarettes. I've seen people literally just direct lung cigarettes, and then, it became a thing for me when I was asking people, so how do you smoke? Do you smoke into your mouth first and then into your lungs, or just, and then I heard that there's a thing called cowboy style, where you just go right straight hitting the motherboard.
Look, I rocked it on the K Fun, which is like a very restricted direct lung. It wasn't. I didn't do it on anything like airy. It was either the Hadley or the K Fun. I also have the Org Vape Merlin, one of the original Org Vape Merlins that I was rocking it in, and I would put this in with the insert, which kind of restricts the whole chamber as well. So a lot of it wasn't super direct to lung. I did keep it like restrictive. I don't know if it would work in something like a goon for me. But yeah, I just wanted to know if you guys double it for mouth to lung. Like
on the topic of direct lung, back in the days when I vaped tobacco, Fear's Creamy Cuban was one that I made. And I mean, I can't remember enough of it now to give you notes, but I really enjoyed it then. But it was full on direct lung. And this is the reason I gave up tobacco. The reason I gave up smoking was because I started getting actual pain in my lungs when I would inhale cigarettes. And it just got to the point where I thought, this can't be not only not good for me, it can't be, it's now getting to the point where it's getting lethal. So when I moved across to vaping, I wanted to try tobaccos, and I mixed up Creamy Cuban and various others, and I enjoyed them. But I suddenly started getting the same thing with vaping concentrates, with all tobacco concentrates. Got the same thing. When I inhale it, my lungs actually start hurting. So it's not the tar in cigarettes that we're doing. It's something in actual tobacco flavors themselves. Because like FA tobaccos aren't nets, right? I mean, it's a flavor that's made of chemicals that have never seen a tobacco plant. But there's something about, I don't know, just the way that tobacco flavors are formulated that was causing me distress in my lungs. My lungs actually hurt. Like if I had to take 2% FA burley now and just vape it as a single flavor tester, my lungs would start hurting. Now I don't know what it is. I don't know what FA burley has in common with Chesterfield, which is what I used to smoke, that both of them cause my lungs to hurt, and to hurt badly.
Maybe it's some post-traumatic stress, like Your body
don't know
just
what it-
saying this,
Yeah,
this taste
yeah,
and the lung. Yeah.
it might be a memory thing,
Mm.
like a memory, a flavor memory thing. But it's strange. But I don't get it with any other vaping flavor. I don't get harshness from vaping flavors. I don't get throat hit. Even RY4s, I can vape Soho, RY4 double, all of those fine, because I'm getting mostly like caramel, vanilla type of stuff from Robin tobacco. The moment I vape tobacco on its own, I'm just taken right back to my last few months of smoking, where I thought, you continue with this, you're going to be dead in a year. That is what it gives me, and that's why I don't mix tobacco. So it's painful. It's physically painful.
Richard, I actually thought the reason you quit smoking is because you wanted to chuck big clouds. So
Oh,
it's
that
good to
too.
hear you just-
I wanted a Pico to appeal to the chick and all of that other stuff as well. But
Can you imagine Richard standing outside of a mall just blowing like a massive cloud out? Like
in the mall, China, in the mall. Gunday glass.
Like, ooh.
In the pick and pay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With his like thick gold chain, dude.
yeah, at the checkout thing. And like people behind you complain, you turn around and say, I'm saving my life, China. Don't you need grief?
Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up the show now. So I just wanted to first of all thank Fresho3 for letting us run here, right after his show. And of course, everybody that's joined us in chat and keeps on doing that week after week. We just really thankful and humbled by that. I also want you to go and check out the description of this video. You'll find myself, Rudy, Daniel, and Dietz. You'll find all our ATF profiles over there. Hopefully we'll see a Richard profile there soon. Hopefully. He keeps it secret, his secret Richard recipes. But that's the ones I have down there. I've also put some of the channels that I'm supporting, that we're collaborating with. So please go and check out those channels below. And then finally, I've added in the DIY Primer PDF that Richard wrote. You can download that. Anybody that's starting DIY, you can just flick that through to them, and it will just, every question that they have, which general DIYers have to start out with, it's going to meet their needs, right? And it's also a good thing to just go through. Okay. So yeah, guys.
And like and subscribe. Yeah. Like and subscribe if you're not already.
Subscribe. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. And we will see you next week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Yeah.
Bye.